code switching and what do y'all mean by code switching? Because I can change the way I talk. I can take my vernacular at any moment, but I'm never going to stop being as pro-black as I was when I'm saying the N-word with my homies or saying power with my white boss. Like, it's all the same. I'm doing the same. Pow. Buddy old pal.
I think for me, especially with me going to Lawrence Central, I think it was like we had a mixed representation of teachers. So it was like for me, code switching, I learned to code switch when I got here, especially like when I came to IU was a complete culture shock for me because it was always like LC was like a mixing pot. It was like you had every type of person, red, green, blue, yellow, orange that was there. So it was never that we had, I never had a feeling that I was small. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, when I got to IU, and it wasn't even necessarily in groups, but when I came through in the fall and I had that first experience in my first class as being the only Black student in that class, and specifically having to speak, giving microaggressions and having to speak on behalf of all the Black students at IU and how we feel, specifically when things would happen. That was hard for me specifically because I've always been one to tell how I feel. But sometimes I've learned that sometimes when you say certain things, it is a switch to shut some people down.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to understand that because when I would try to go to professors like, hey, I'm struggling about this, how I would come off to them, how they would see me as he think I'm doing something wrong. He's being aggressive. So let me back off and let him vent and let him say what he needs to say. And then I will make sure that I'm doing as much as possible. Mm-hmm. But when it got to the point where, like, when I got into the school of public health, like, I will say that probably that group of professors that I've had over the course of these 4 years have been the best group of professors that I've had on this campus. And it's kind of hard because it's like at times, especially my sophomore year, I didn't know if I was code switching anymore. I didn't know if I was losing sight of my inner Blackness and talking to professors and trying to get involved, be a leader. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm pro-Black anything. Mm-hmm. If it's the uprising of our people, it is what it is. I'm down with it. But I will always think, when do I draw the line? When is this going to affect my academics? So if I go to this or if I do this and my professors see this, how is this going to impact my future if I ask for a recommendation letter? Mm-hmm. If I do this and if I do this and if I do this, how will this impact me if I go for a job? Definitely. So it was hard for me to code switch, specifically when talking to professors, whether it be for recommendation letters, leadership positions, different things like that. But I've learned how to talk to professors so much to the point to where I don't feel the need to have to prove myself because I'm here as I am. Mm-hmm. And you have to accept me as I am because regardless, I'm going to be here. And there's no wishing me away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I'll have to say, like, just like being in Kelly these past 3 years, it's really showed me like what code switching means to me specifically. I think as a freshman, it was just like, okay, code switch like full time. You're with all these people. Like, I was direct at mid, so yes, I was already at mid in the school. But at the same time, like, you really want to build those relationships with those professors and the students that were in your class. So I just think that over like the next 2 years, the Kelly Office of Diversity Initiatives, the Cody office, that was like my mini Neil Marshall in the Kelly school. Mm-hmm. Like, I could go in there like anytime. Like, it was that admissions office, but you can go there talking to any advisor, any person that worked there. It could be the receptionist at the front, and just really talking about, hey, this happened today, like, what advice can you give, and things like that. And I really think the Cody office showed that, hey, you are African American, display who you are, be true to yourself, but code switching to us is just, hey, be proper with how you're speaking to them, be respectful, have respect for everyone in the room, and make sure that when it comes to getting education, you're getting what you need. But other than that, stay true to yourself. So I feel like my version of code switching is just like, hey, let me eliminate the slang, but I'm still going to be me because at the end of the day, I know what I deserve and what I can offer the classroom for your teaching style as well as my learning style.
But it's still like, and this is for everybody in the room, no matter how hard you code switch, let me speak from my experiences. No matter how hard I code switch, no matter how hard I change my language, I'm still angry. I still have an attitude, and I still get extreme microaggressions. It does not make like other races see you different because you talk this way. Because at the end of the day, they already have this perception of what a Black woman is, what a Black man is.
But I think it's one thing to take note that code switching takes forms in so many different ways. So in the aspect of the way that I would say that I code switch is definitely my vernacular and the way that I conduct myself when I'm speaking to people. However, I am very styles of resistance. The way that you're going to know that I'm me predominantly, you're going to see me wearing something really different. You're going to see me wearing a beret or a hat, or I'll have purple hair or red hair or pink hair. That's how I display myself in these workspaces. But then again, on that fact of code switching and me talking the way that I do, that's what makes people actually, I feel like, pay attention to me outside of my styles of resistance, which I do quite often. That it's just, it takes form in so many different ways. You can resist in every aspect, but keep this professionalism. And I think that's the part to take into consideration, is that being professional and code switching are like really different, because I can be wearing, I don't know, basketball shorts and a beater and still be professional. And that's not me code switching. That's just me being a professional, and that's me doing what I have to do. So I think we have to take into account that sometimes it's not you being code switching, because who says you have to turn on your smartness like we're not already smart? It's just me being professional.
I gotta get your contact. You out here.
I'm really glad you brought that up, just because, like, I feel like during this conversation we've been
code switching, like really.
Not even that, but I feel like we've been throwing around code switching so loosely. So I feel like just when Paige was just describing, I'm like, well, that's not code switching. That's just professionalism. And I can be professional.
Okay.
I can be professional and not be code switching. So I feel like that. Well, I guess my question is, what is y'all definition of code switching? Because being professional is not code switching. I'm still myself. I don't need to conform. I don't even need to make it seem like I'm conforming, because I'm a Black woman, but I'm still professional, and I can still be professional. So what do y'all define code switching as?
So, finally jump in. I've had a lot of thoughts on everything. I just haven't had the chance to slide in there. But so code switching. The thing for me is I've always had this like love-hate relationship, I guess, with that word, because it's like everybody, quote unquote, code switches. White, Black, red, purple, it doesn't matter, because everybody has to, change, or not change, but alter the way that they speak or dress to get to the next level, or to move whichever way that they need to go. But of course, for Black people, it's always going to be different, because we have an extra barrier on top of us. I see code switching kind of as twofold. It's either one way you're code switching to make the white man comfortable. And that's the code switching that I feel like at that point you're compromising your integrity, your Blackness, all of that. And that's a no-go. I'm going to just say, if I want to walk around and say, my nigga, and there's a white person right there, so be it. I don't care how you feel. I'm not about to sit here and make you comfortable, because I walk around every day feeling uncomfortable because of your white ass. And that's just the fact of it. So that's the part of the code switching that I just don't, I don't like.
That was right.
Now the other,
you done took the table. I'll let you finish, because I'm let you finish.
The other part of code switching, I think for Black people, it comes down to
Take my wig off.
just watching the way that you sort of approach certain situations. So yes, when it comes to professors, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say, oh, I have a question about this or a question about that, but I'm not about to change the way that I approach it, though. I'm not going to change too much of it, because at that point, I'm not being me. And if I'm not being me, then why am I here? Because if I'm not me, that means I don't need help, right? I need help. So I'm going to bring me and what I have questions for. I'm not going to switch up. I feel like professionalism and code switching, they have some ties.
They definitely intermingle.
But I don't think they're the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Just a quick reminder before y'all, the topic is a little hot.
What's the next question?
It's hot. We'll keep going, but I just want to let the audience know, anybody that did come out here, we want you all to follow along and tweet about it, okay? If y'all do tweet about it, the hashtag is Let's Talk Black IU. Once again, it's Let's Talk Black IU. Y'all can do questions, comments, concerns, feed in, talk about the panelists, do whatever y'all got to do. But I just
Don't dog us.
Right. Yeah. So
dog.
I wanted to say that before we continue on with the conversation. So who all had their hand raised?
I know. I'm gonna let y'all. No, it's okay. Let me just let my go.
So I agree with you 100%. You're wholly right. But I feel like we really define what code switching is. We got to actually talk about the difference between that and conforming. So like your first example is what I would call conforming. Like this is when you're deliberately assimilating to the ways that aren't comfortable for you, but doing it because you feel like that's for the greater benefit. Code switching is a tactic that you use to be able to remain yourself while navigating this space. So like going into this, I'm gonna give an example. Like, where's that at?
Okay, wait.
Code switching should be used to really pimp the system to your own advantage.
Love
Keep
it.
it a bit.
Like
I don't want to use the word pimp, but I'm going to use it.
Finesse.
So like, you can finesse it to however you need it. So if I need to get a job, I'm going to go in there speaking and using big words and talking like I know what I'm talking about. And that's code switching because at home, I'm not talking like that.
Yeah.
I'm cussing, I'm rapping, I'm dropping song lyrics mid-convo. Like, that's not how I'm going to talk in my work environment. But code switching is the ability for me to sound like my white counterparts while not being my white counterparts. And the minute you start to be them, you're not code switching anymore. You're losing your blackness and you're conforming to the white side. Let me not make this black and white. You're conforming to something that's non-black and you're not being yourself.
But
I got a question.
Hold on.
I've got a question.
Okay, hold on.
I'll let you go.
All right. So I'm sitting here listening, and professionalism and code switching is basically making the white man comfortable. Like the fact that we really was in here using those words to kind of finesse. Why are we having to finesse? Who made it the standard that this is what professionalism is? A white man.
Okay.
Or whoever is in power, which is in most spaces what?
The white man.
So meaning that they're the what? That they're
majority.
No, that they're.
I know what you're talking.
I know.
No. Okay.
No.
Oh.
The way
Wait, can I ask my question?
I feel I've been in black professional environments and I had to code switch.
Okay, so like I know like when I described it, everyone was kind of like, okay, Paige, you're mostly talking about being professional, but then like, do you guys like you just said like when you use big words like that's you code switching, but is that not professionalism?
Because I feel like way normally. Like,
okay, but I feel like even if you're doing something that you don't normally do, that is still code switching. Yeah. If I'm in a professional environment, I'm going to act as such in a way that's professional that I don't act when I'm at home. That's still
I feel like it can still be like code switching depending on like.
But see, that's where it gets a little messy because at that point everybody does that. So when we're talking about how black people do it, where does it become different from a white person code switching and a black person code switching? Where is the difference? Because if there's no difference, that means professionalism and code switching are the same thing.
I feel like it's our own
I feel like, but they're not. But that's the thing. They're not the same.
What's the next question?
So where
the difference is how far you taking it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. How far you take it?
All right, we'll allow a few more responses, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doc.
I think like the best example for code switching for me personally is like growing up around like my auntie and my mama. So they at home, they chilling, they might be washing dishes, they get a phone call. Hello, is this Tasha Cassell? Oh, this is she. She going there, she talking. This is she. Blah blah, and then you might do something off the wall. You jumping on the couch or something. That's a form of code switching because on the phone they can hear her normal conversation, they can hear her normal voice. But once you heard that, you knew she's serious. But then she get back on the phone like, oh yeah, I would like to schedule the interview tomorrow at about 3 p.m. Is that perfect for you? And then she hang up the phone, and then she's back to normal. I feel like that's like code switching.
I feel like the professionalism is with that. So if someone were to call me right now, then I can be professional. But they could be white or black, and I'm going to be professional. Right. If I was talking to a director and he was black and a director and he was white, I'm going to be professional. So I don't really consider that code switching. For me and my personal, I feel like code switching is when I'm changing kind of like my body language. So even if the director was black, I feel like if I'm talking to him and the way I'm laughing or just the way my hands are, he's not going to take anything I'm doing as aggressive or being over or whatever. So that I feel like is me not having a code switch. And it doesn't mean I'm like, feel like I'm, what you were saying, like conforming or thinking I'm putting some of my morals or priorities about being black on the side. I just feel like for me, code switching is trying to find a way to where it's like, it's more so body language, I feel like, for me.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. But anything after that, I feel like when you're going with the morals, then it's no longer code switching to me. Then it's conforming. But when you talk about code switching, I feel like it is what you were saying, like playing the system to beat the system. Because at the end of the day, you have to get there. Period. And you're not going to get there because, like you said, in normal times, the person in charge is the white man. So sometimes he does have to feel a little more comfortable, but then eventually you're going to be the person in charge. And then that's that.
Period.
Okay.
All right,
That's
so
great.
I'm not gonna lie. No more responses.
That was a
Yeah,
good
no, that was good.
Because you wrapped it all, hit it all.
Thanks, Mark.
Switch it up a little bit, y'all. So, speaking to my experience, and I feel at least everybody's experience in this building today, oftentimes we find ourselves being the black student in our classes, and sometimes one of the few students of color in our department. This often leads to us being the spokesperson for our race when certain topics or conversations arise, because we are the only ones in the room at the time. So, my questions to you is this something that you welcome or shy away from?
I got the best example.
Okay.
Okay. I'm for real, y'all. This is a good example.
Okay.
So I'm in my biz communication course,
Right.
C204, C204, and I'm the only African American in my class, only black kid in my class. The case that we get is over natural hair care products, and we have to develop a whole consulting strategy for the company.
Okay.
I'm the only black person in my class, so we have to give speeches so that you can pick who do you want on your team. And my teacher, obviously, she's white, and she emailed me. She's like, "Hey, Paige, like everyone wants to be on your team. Like, I guess you just have so much experience." And I was like, "It's not experience; it's who I am." Okay. So, I think that like within my team, when I was talking to other black kids who were in other sections, a lot of them were angry and they didn't want to help their team. They were just kind of like, quit asking me questions, things like that. But I said, guys, like this is a time where we can teach them or show them more about our culture and our heritage. And just like with my team project, I was able to talk to my team and say, hey guys, as long as you're respectful and you understand what you're asking me, I'm open to showing you more just about natural hair care. And I want to be able to help just you guys understand my viewpoint, my perspective. This doesn't cover all the black community, so what I say does not mean that's what they think down the hallway. So I think that was something I truly learned, how to really just talk with people who were of a different culture and still show them who I am, but still being respectful.
And
that's good.
Just to add on to that, I ended up taking a course, a media school course, journalism with media studies, J261, and I was the only black student in that class, and the class was also majority female. Oh. So with that being said, I think I was out of a class of about 17. There were 4 males in that entire class, and I was the only black male. So that enough by itself was for me was hard. But as we got into it, as you look into the media, there's always been a study about minorities in the media. So we ended up reading this book called Race Baiter. And immediately as we got to start reading this book, we start talking about racism in the media. We start talking about discrimination, systematic racism, and all these different topics. And I think for me, it was hard because at that point is when I truly had started to see the ignorance of people not realizing that racism is real. And I think for me, it was at that point when I finally accepted, because in the beginning, when I talked to my mentor, I was like, I can't continue to keep on telling people that this is this is that, this is that, because it's like talking to a brick wall. But it wasn't until I had my first educational moment with a student that they was like, well, I think racism, they specifically said, and I quote, racism happened back when Martin Luther King was marching. It's not happening. So immediately after that was said, my professor, she's a white female, and actually she was like one of the only professors I got close with within a media school, within journalism. She looked at me and she said, if you would like to, you can. So that for me right there was that, like, for one, that was a go ahead for me. That was a go ahead for me. But that was the first time I've ever had an educational moment with a student, with a majority white student. And it was like, for me, having that experience of being able to educate you on something that you not necessarily know about, and not necessarily, because when it's one-on-one, yeah, okay. But when you're in a setting to where it's like other people are watching, I'm not saying like embarrass them. I'm not saying embarrass at all. But when we go to educate, we're not saying, oh, you're a racist and you think this is that and this, that, and the other, because that's the reason why people shut down in the beginning. Because as soon as you say, well, you're a racist, you don't ever understand, you will never understand, that's why they won't understand. Because at the moment that we start hitting and bashing them, it's just like professors. Okay, I'm going to back off. I don't want nothing to do with this. Because as white people they have the ability to turn a blind eye and don't have to care about it. Mm-hmm. They have the ability to say, well, I don't got to deal with this. They could turn the other cheek. We can't. We live in it on a day-to-day basis. So having that teaching moment and being able to say, this is some of the things that I experience on a day-to-day basis and relating it back to the text. And she actually was like, wow, I didn't know that this existed. I think that small breakthrough is a continuous fight that we as educated Black students here on campus is a fight that we're going to have, and it's going to get tiring because you're going to feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. But I think for me, as long as I know that somebody's taking something from it and they're willing to aid the change, I'm fine with that.
Personally, I'm not fine. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. The audacity that they, like, it's not even the fact that you don't know. It's the fact that what you say. You don't even care what you say. So I was in a class, and it was Twitter fingers. So we had to do an online submission anonymously.
It was
snap. Dear God.
So
hold on.
The argument was that we're talking about Colin Kaepernick kneeling. So we're in a class about sport, right? So the Black Panther fist gets compared to the Confederate flag.
What?
Oh. It said that
Are you using this last year?
Yeah. We both responded to him.
So I really went, and I was so mad. I'm like, yeah, he got me messed up. I'm about to.
So he responded. So basically what he said is that he doesn't think that Black, and he quoted Black athletes should kneel within the NFL to protest specifically because it shouldn't be protesting something that happened 100 years ago. They're using their platform that they've been given to ask for free handouts.
But he was protesting police brutality, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
But something that happened now.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I was saying to that, like, me and Carrington both responded to him, and we both ended up getting in trouble by a professor
because I put him on Twitter.
Yeah, he went to the extreme, and he let him know. Yeah. But I tagged along with him, and I gave him each educational fact. I broke down his argument to the T, every single point. Like, that was probably the longest paper I've ever written, and responded to him individually. So that point right there is like, for me, educating someone that's ignorant, because we're going to have ignorant people regardless. Yeah. But it's like, the moment that we say I've had enough and I'm done educating people, we're not gonna get nowhere. It's gonna stop there.
I think personally, I am so sorry.
Go ahead.
Personally, I am an education major, so this is something that I love to do.
Okay.
So I really do. But at some point, everybody does get tired. In my class, we have like a communications class, and again, oftentimes when talking about the issue of race, it's one of those topics where it's like the room goes quiet.
Yes.
And that's my opportunity to talk. Okay. I like to talk. So it's just like, sometimes I have to inform them on this tokenistic fallacy that they have about racism. Is that we had
tokenistic fallacy.
So essentially, most are like, "Whoa, we had a Black president. They can't be racist. Look at Oprah. She's a billionaire. What does that have to do with anything?" Because the majority of the race is still not on these platforms that these people are, and some people think still in this society that racism is fixed, and that just because it's not explicitly as it used to be, that it's not there anymore. But I have to tell them that it's implicitly ingrained in all of these different systems, where it's institutionally, economically, in any type of facet, even in the criminal justice system, that African Americans are going to oftentimes be oppressed. And even through education, we don't even tell them the correct narrative. And I say, as we look at public education, how many people knew that Abraham Lincoln didn't want to actually abolish slavery to abolish slavery?
I was 8 years old.
All he wanted to do was to keep the Union together. That's not something you learn in public education. But then another thing that I have to tell them is that what American history conventionally does is it ignores Black history all the time, because it's just like they have this whole thing of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But who built those bootstraps, babe? And that's something that they obviously don't listen to, or some of the white kids in my class don't understand. So I take that moment to just, flaunt a little bit, to tell you about Black history, and just to tell you a little bit about what happened or what your ancestors did in this instance. And I think it's a great opportunity for me, because it's just that I'm helping someone, even if they're ignorant in these spaces, because education is being a teacher, you're going to deal with people from diverse backgrounds all the time. And so it's just like, you're going to deal with these little black kids who come from inner city neighborhoods who don't have the same resources. And I have to tell you that they're not going to have the same resources based on geographically where they are, because oppression is a thing that very much so still exists, because institutional racism and factors play a big part. So in these instances where we get to college educated people, I will educate you so much to a T. But at some point, I cannot acknowledge or even deal with the ignorance sometimes when it comes to things, because the information is out there. And if you don't have the want to seek it out, why is it in some instances that I have to be the one to provide it to you? So,
and I think
I forgot. So recently we just had an event at the Neil Marshall. So we have like a lot of events for Black History Month or whatever. So you have different professors that assign assignments, to their students, and they tell them to come out to these events, get information about it, So we just had the Knowledge Bowl that recently just happened, and so the event started at about 7. It was probably about like 6:15, and 2 white females, they came up. They asked one of the professional staff members, could they interview them about the event. The event didn't start till 7. So, like, are you really here for the event, or are you just here to get your assignment done? So then they told them, maybe you should stay, you should, enjoy the event, and then you'll be able to write the information instead of coming to me for your answer. So then I walk in, I'm in the back. They, walk up to me, excuse me, can we interview you about the event? I'm like, the event that's about to start like at 7? They're like, yeah, can you tell us a little information about it? What does Black History Month mean to you? Blah, blah. I'm like, so you basically here to get your assignment done. I was like, maybe you should, sit and enjoy the event. And then maybe you'll have the answers that you need for your assignment through the event, because you'll be able to sit through the event and actually experience it. So I feel like, kind of like what Carrington said, like, it does get tiring every time trying to be the one to have to educate or speak for all Black people, because everybody has a different experience. Like, just because, I'm coming to the Knowledge Bowl and I've been to the Knowledge Bowl for the last 3 years doesn't mean my experience is going to be the same as somebody who's their first time at the Knowledge Bowl. Right. So, why won't you, sit down and then you'll be able to be like, wow, I learned a lot about Black music, or I learned a lot about, the Negro national anthem, different things like that. So I feel like a lot of times white people try to use us, as their, direct answers when they have the time to, sit there and do the work themselves. So never feel like you have to be that person that has to answer literally everything. Sometimes people have to, go through an experience instead of you just giving them the easy way out. And like, well, I'm going to tell you about the Knowledge Bowl, then you literally leave before the event even start. Because I want you to sit here and I want you to feel uncomfortable, because you about to see people get up and do chicken head or, stinky leg, whatever. You back here and you like, girl, what dance is that? You trying to figure it out. And maybe you might like the chicken head dance, so you're going to go Google it later and you're going to do the chicken head.
Being sports like.
You got to give people that experience, to, don't take that experience from them. And then you go back and be like, well, I hope you enjoyed the event. Hope to see you at another one. Not just for your assignment, but.
My thing with being that spokesperson, honestly, me personally, I love it. I will stand up and be like, this is what you should know, what you shouldn't know. And obviously, like I said, we're not a monolith, so you need to ask other people too. But I most definitely am open to educating you, to showing you the Black experience, because especially in situations where it's like, if they're asking, especially if they're asking respectfully, you should always be open to showing them your perspective, because at that point, if you don't, you're just letting them stay ignorant, especially when they don't want to be ignorant anymore. So I get how, it can be tiring, especially in spaces where the people literally just don't want to learn. I honestly am rarely in those spaces within my major, at least, my major and my minor. Most oftentimes the people are more open-minded and willing to listen and things like that. But even then, they're like, okay, but how do you feel about this? Because most times when we're having those discussions, I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit back and listen to see what's about to come out your mouth before I respond. And then once they say what they have to say, I'm like, okay, well, let me break this down for you. And they're like, okay, yes, I want you to break it down for me. And then, especially in those times, we should be really open to explaining the Black experience, so that we can have people on our side, allies, to help us progress, because we can't, as Black, we can't get anywhere just by ourselves. We have to have somebody else's help. So.
Johnny, I want to speak to your point and pose a question. So I noticed you mentioned that a lot of us, although we are Black and we do share that, a lot of us have different experiences. So even us sitting at the table, I feel like we all have different experiences and different backgrounds. So with the population, the Black population being so small, a lot of Black students have friends with white students and other members of larger populations at IU. So can an individual immersed in a culture outside of the Black community contribute to Black progression? If so,
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it.
How we gonna get there.
I feel like one thing that I tried to make it my duty is, I told y'all, I was raised in suburbs, whatever. But I'd start to catch myself like, I'm hanging around a lot of Black people. So maybe I need to go, like when I sit in these public relations classes, because look, bro over here, who just so happens to be white, can help me out in the future. So let me go ahead and connect with them and make friends outside of my race so I can be a well-rounded and, have diverse friends. It's really fun.
So the question is contributing to the progression of the Black community?
Yes.
I say absolutely. Because like I was saying earlier, it's like uplifting as we climb. I think it's very important that we are in this white space, like Brinley said, navigating this white space, but we also got to help our people.
That's right.
So if that's, inviting your friends who are Oreos, like I said earlier, to the Black Culture Center, look at all this stuff that happened, all the the history on our walls, it can be really casual, but contributing to that progression, I feel like it's really important, and I don't think that it's encouraged here. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like it's encouraged here.
I think we also have this separatism type of approach with things, that it's always the way we view the world is Black-white perspective sometimes, but binary. Even with doing that, binary, that's what I was trying to say, I couldn't think of the word, is that we tend to forget that even with the Civil Rights March that we had, there were white people that were there too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's just we can't just think that just because you're so far removed that you won't have any type of way to help, because again, when they are in these positions of power, that means that they can use what they're doing to help us move this right here, to move this chess piece right here, and then period, we all good.
Yeah. But I do feel like Johnny said earlier, it's a part of their assignment. So they're immersing themselves in, this Black culture for a grade. Mm-hmm. I see a couple people right here in this space right now that are probably here for a grade. Mm. So I just feel like it's really just hard to differentiate who's here to use to use your platform to contribute to the equity of everybody, and who's here to get ahead themselves.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I would even say everybody been tweeting, everybody want to be Black until it's time to be Black.
Period.
Everybody was at Astro World, but I mean, what you doing for the Black community? Are you coming to the events like Johnny said? You was at Astro World, but did you come to Knowledge Bowl to really learn about Black history? Are you gonna embrace and you feel me? Cardi B when she come to NAP, or the City Girls.
Singing July 30th.
You feel me? That's what I'm saying though. It's cool when it's cool, but when we want y'all to speak out on some stuff, or you see us in the class by ourselves, and or you have a insight on an experience, and you don't speak up about it. So, are you really down for the cause, or you just want to bang that Astro, or you just want to bang that Cardi B?
But wait, just 1 second, because I just kind of feel like we can't assume. Yeah. We cannot assume things about all white people, just like you don't want them to assume things about us. Mm-hmm. We cannot assume that they're all bad, or that they're disrespectful, or huh?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. I said that we didn't say that. What I said earlier is just hard to differentiate who's here for this and who's here for that.
But always, what helps me is just always assume the best.
Yeah.
So you don't know, but you don't. But the thing is,
moderator, I made on that one. Wait a minute.
But you still don't know. That's just like somebody doing that to you. You still don't. You can't play fire for fire.
We as Black people, we deal with it every day. So we might walk into the classroom, yesterday, and Kayla might have had her hair up. The next day is different. So then she's already dealing with those different people are assuming things about her because she's Black. So I feel like we deal with that every day. So we want to assume that anybody is not necessarily in this space for the right reasons. We're going to assume that, but at the end of the day, I hope you learn something, and then it changes your perspective about, how you view things. And also, I do agree with you. Not all white people are bad. My godmom, she's my third grade teacher. That's you right here. Still take his day. You feel me? So all white people are not bad. You know what I'm saying? You have those people that actually care about the Black experience and are trying to, better the experience. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you have to look at things very clearly too. This person, they might come off like they might really care, but do they really care though? That's the thing though, because you have to be able to, if you don't feel enough to be able to share an experience with this person, then they're not really there to help you, because you feel like it's still a barrier up with that individual. So we might have these, different white professors and different things like that we might grow close to, but at the same time, I'm not breaking down and venting to this white professor like I would a Black professor, just because I know their intentions are really to help me, when this other white professor is probably just here for a check, and then they have other students that they're worried about. So sometimes they're not always there to uplift the Black community.
I'm not saying that they're always there, but just like you can't always assume that they're there to trash you or they're there to not be there for you.
And I think because the population here is so small, we get into the habit of just befriending people off bat just because they share the similarity of being Black.
Exactly.
So me and you, Johnny, yeah, we're cool, but what if the only similarity we had was being Black, but the person in my school of public health class who's sitting right next to me might be a white female or a white male? I probably, and that's a thing for myself, which I'm trying to do better about, I'll probably never speak to her just because she doesn't share that similarity with me, that she's Black. But I probably have so much more in common with her than I do with you, but I'm never going to cross that barrier because I'm just going to assume off bat, which isn't a good thing, because then you have people who are here or who are in your classes that could do something for you, not even in the sense like, oh, for your career, but just as a friend.
As a friend.
But you don't want to cross it because you feel like at the end of the day, you don't have that similarity. But I feel like if we lived in places like Atlanta or DC or somewhere where diversity was so present, we wouldn't just be having friends just because they were Black.
But
or
it's
just
an action, though. I feel like if you show me that you're genuine and that you care, okay, we cool. Like,
but that's
but then they have to
things before you even.
But if they have to show you, that means we have to show them as well. It's not. We can't have a double standard.
Black people, it's a culture thing though. With Black, it's all about culture. So with a Black person, we might be able to walk in a room and see another Black person. I'm initially be like, hey, how you doing? What's up? But you might walk in a room with white people. They might be like, or not even necessarily assuming that, but at the same time, it's never that same culture thing. It's just a culture thing. Like Black people, a lot of us are raised, that you speak to somebody that's Black. If you see somebody else Black in the grocery store, you're like, hey, it's how you get a small conversation. But it's not literally the same way when it comes to, our white counterparts, because they aren't raised the same. Like a lot of people are stuck in, their ways, and they're not going to go out their way and speak to different people.
But do you go out your way to speak to them?
Yeah,
I definitely.
Absolutely.
But why does that?
I just wanted to make sure.
But why does that onus have to be on us though? Because look, it may not be safe to assume the worst of every white person we come across. Scratch that. It is safe to assume that.
Okay.
Because we live in a society that's not built for us.
Exactly.
So everybody don't have our best interests at heart. And so it's not easy for us to tell who does and who doesn't. And so it's not on our own to go find out who does and who doesn't either. So while it may not necessarily be right to assume every white person is bad, it's a safe assumption to make because we live in a dangerous world. Now, it would be nice to befriend more white people, but that can't be returned to us. And if it hasn't been returned to me a lot in my experience, I'm not going to go out of my way to seek it. Like, it's just not smart, especially when I know that not only has it not been returned, but in situations, I could actually harm myself by trying to do that.
And it's like one of those things where it's really subjective. Like the neighborhood that you grew up in, it was a predominantly white neighborhood. So your experience, you've had more experience with white people. In my neighborhood, it was predominantly Black people. And there's aspects of police brutality that occur that make you look at people a little side-eye. And you're like, I'm not trying to get nowhere close to you to be any close to that at all. Because in the situation, if you're in a car with a white friend and you're a Black guy or anything like that, you know who they go trust a little bit more than you? That person.